All right, so today we're going to talk about how to create a template for the hexagonal slab vessel project. And it's a lantern, so we're going to talk about how to work in the holes as well. So your sample size is going to be this. This year we're going to go for a 7-inch tall piece that does not have a wide midsection in the way that this piece here does. Because those tend to not work out as well as pieces that have a little bit of a skinnier hip or waist on them. So let's talk about where we're gonna go. So first you're gonna get a piece of paper and you're gonna fold it in half, like a hot dog bun. Okay, then you're gonna get your ruler and you're gonna come to the bottom. My general measurement is about 1 inch, so I'm going to make a mark there at 1 inch. You could go as wide as 1.5 inches for this part, but do not go up to 2 inches. That's going to make your piece giant and it's going to end up having some issues. Then I'm going to turn on its side. So I've got my 1 inch here and I'm going to turn on its side and I'm going to go to the 7-inch mark, line it up and make a mark. Then I get to decide where I want my waist to be. You can decide to have it anywhere, but might I recommend having it in the top third or the bottom third so that it gives a little bit more interest. You can put it dead center if you're so inclined though. So I'm gonna go with top third. So I'm gonna come here to about the 2-inch mark and make a mark. Okay, so I've got my marks here. Now I'm gonna make the width. So my top and bottom, I almost always want to be about the same so that it has a bit of balance as a piece. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to make a mark at the 1-inch mark and I'm going to connect that line to the 1-inch mark. Then I'm going to come to my mark that I made in the middle. This is where the waist is going to be. And I'm going to make this 1.5 inches. So I'm going to come to 1.5 inches and I'm going to draw a line there. And I already have the bottom one, so I'll just remind you that you have a 1-inch mark there. Okay, so I've got this. Now I'm going to connect them. So I'm going to take top to midsection, line up the corners, and then I'm going to connect them. Okay, so that's what I've done there. Now I'm going to connect the midsection to the bottom by connecting the corners. All right, and that's what I've got. So once again, this whole thing is 7 inches tall. This one right here is 1 inch. This one right here is 1.5 inches. And this one is 1 inch as well. So I've got my paper folded in half though. So that's gonna make it double when I cut it out. It's really important that when you're cutting it out that you do so precisely. So I'm gonna stay directly on top with my line. I'm not going to get crooked at all. Okay, so there's the first part, and here I go for the second part. Okay, and then I'm gonna cut the top. And then I'm gonna make a really straight line, and it's really important that I end up at that corner point. I don't wanna get, wiggly with this midsection bit. Okay, so now I've got my parts. All right, so I'm gonna write bottom and I'm gonna write my name. And I'm gonna write top and I'm gonna write my name. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and write my period on both as well, so that if I find these on the floor, I can return them to your shelf. Okay, now I'm going to want to think about where I'm going to put, I should have written it afterwards, where I'm going to put my cutout. So I'm going to put my cutout on the top, and you can do it kind of like, you would like do a heart in elementary school when you're making a Valentine. So you can think about, what kind of shape you want. If I wanted a diamond, I could kind of rough it out, but I'd always want to come back in with a ruler and make sure my lines were straight. And you can do any shape. It does end up being easier if you build it in though, because then it's going to be in the center. You don't want to have your shape come any closer to the edge than this one does, because then it makes it very fragile to work with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that out. All right, so there is my piece for the top, which I'm going to have to write my name on again. Okay, and here is my piece for the bottom. All right, so that's the basics of how to get started. I would then take this and I would trace it onto a piece of mat board. And I would cut it out on the mat board. Why would I use mat board? Great question. You're going to make 6 of these, and by the time you're on the second one, your paper template is probably going to have given out. So now I'm just going to trace this. Might be slightly easier if you used a marker. It's really important that you keep your edges nice and crisp. Okay, so there's my bottom bit, and I can actually just line the top bit up just next to it because they do line up. And you see how making the paper version first makes it so that everything is symmetrical. If I just tried to measure this out, I might be less successful. To get the center cut out, you're going to want to actually hold on to this and just use this when you're doing your center cutouts, because the chances of you getting this cut out perfectly are not great. And then you're going to go ahead and come back in with your scissors, and once again pay close attention to keeping your lines nice and straight. Okay, if you make a mistake at this stage, you're going to just do it again, because if you make a template that isn't straight, the chances of your piece looking good are almost nil. So here I've got it, and I'm going to write my name. I'm going to write my period. And I'm going to keep these in a really safe place, okay? Because if I don't, and I only get halfway through making my pieces, it's going to be a problem. And I'll show you a separate tutorial for how to make the bottom of the hexagon, because that's going to be a little tricky. And then I'm going to keep this for sure, and I'm going to keep this for sure, because these are my insurance policy. What if I lose my original template? I'll still have this. So I'm going to want to stick this inside my sketchbook with a paper clip somewhere safe. Okay? And that's how you make a template for a hexagon.